Okay, the time is 4 o'clock. I will call the City of Fort Atkinson Plan Commission meeting to order in person and via Zoom Tuesday, 2023, 4 p.m. Let's make sure I get the right mouse here. Roll call, please. Commissioner Gray,
Here.
Commissioner Highfield,
Here.
Commissioner Kesnick,
Here.
Commissioner Lesko here.
Here.
Councilman Schultz, not here yet, but will be arriving. Manager Lemire here. Engineer Sully.
Here.
Do one of you have the mouse? Never mind. Will you make sure that's on, Michelle, while you're Michelle, the microphone? It is on. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, the Plan Commission will receive comments from city residents. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual. Anyone wishing to speak is required to sign up in advance or state the following items for the record when called upon: name, address, subject matter, and contact information. No action will be taken on any public comments unless the item is also elsewhere on the agenda. So we will start with those folks who are signed up in person. We have Jeannie Newbold.
Good afternoon. Jeannie Newbold, 411 McMillan Street. I object to North 4th Street being vacated. As I have shared before, can you hear me okay? My bedroom windows are 15 feet from the proposed parking lot, with the entire north side of the proposed parking lot abutting to the Ackermans and my property lines. I appreciated the January 18th and the February 1st meetings held by Fort Healthcare and the open discussion and dialogue with concerned neighbors. But I was disappointed that only certain select neighbors were sent invitations to attend the meetings. I get that it's just business for you and for the city. Whatever you believe is in the best interest of the city hospital growth. I'm asking all of you to put yourself in my shoes. I'm unable to sell my home except to the city or Fort Healthcare. My property value has been destroyed and my quality life is being taken. My backyard, which was my oasis, peace and tranquility, will be gone. I will have to listen to the sound of coming and going of vehicles, doors slamming, horns and alarms, inhaling, smelling their toxic fumes, and see their lights shine through my windows. I will have no privacy. I foresee my flower and vegetable gardens being polluted from the toxic runoff of heavy metals, the metals that accumulate from car batteries and airborne fumes. The parking lot pollution is a real thing, and other parking lot pollutants. I respectfully ask you to require the placement of a solid fence along the entire length of the north side of the proposed parking lot. This would at least give the Ackermans and myself some privacy, reduce some of the noise and lights. Also, I would like to see restricted parking in front of my home on McMillan Street, just as the city has the restricted parking on McMillan Street right off of 106. Again, I just feel like the sacrificial lamb. I understand this is a big wheel that keeps turning. And that's about all I've got to say. And I made it within the 3 minutes. How about that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Elliot? Can you state your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Elliot Larson. I live at 415 McMillan Street. I have lived there for 40 plus years at this residence. My wife and I are grateful that the Fort Atkinson has a hospital for our city. I personally don't understand the reasoning that they have proposed to block off 4th Street between McMillan and Armenia. That hospital has plenty of other options to consider for parking rather than discontinuing that portion of 4th Street. This would affect too many factors, and the examples are the traffic patterns, the safety, the efficiency issues with the police and the fire departments, and et cetera. This situation not only affects the residents in the surrounding area, but also many others because it is such an important part of Fort Atkinson with the traffic situation and everything. So I ask you not to block that off. They can do other places for more parking. I urge you as a planning commission to deeply research and take your time to realize what an impact this will have on all of us if you block off that area. This area is vital to leave it open for the people surrounding the hospital. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate it. And I hope that you decide to eliminate that proposal and tell us the city council how you feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all that have signed up for public comment. Is there anybody wishing to speak in person or on the Zoom during the public comment period? So second call for anybody wishing to speak. Third and final call for anyone else wishing to speak. Okay, thank you. The public comment period is closed, and we'll move on to item number 4, which is review and possible action relating to the minutes of the February 14th, 2023 regular plan commission meeting.
I move approval of the minutes from the February 14th regular plan commission meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Next on the agenda is review and possible recommendation to the city council relating to a request to discontinue a portion of North 4th Street between Armenia and McMillan Streets.
Yeah, thank you. As we've heard, this request was brought before the city council at their meeting on February the 7th, where the draft resolution was read to begin the process of consideration for the discontinuance of the North 4th Street right-of-way between Armenia and McMillan Street. There's a fairly involved public process for this. It will end on March the 21st at the city council meeting, where the council will either choose to vote on the resolution or table that for further consideration. The coexistence of a hospital within an established neighborhood always presents challenges, I'm sure. This goes back several decades with various give and take throughout, and this situation is no different. Fort Healthcare is an important part of our community, as is the neighborhood in which it exists. And these discussions are always challenging, but always had with the utmost of respect for both parties. Fort Healthcare has purchased all of the single-family homes immediately to the north of the requested area to be vacated. These homes are going to be moved in anticipation of that movement. There was a rezoning request for those 4 lots to be rezoned to institutional that was approved by the Planning Commission and the City Council in June and July of 2022. The request for the vacation is to allow Fort Healthcare to expand a parking lot to the north side of their main building. The request is in 2 parts. One, to allow for additional parking spaces. Approximately 28 additional spaces will be developed with the vacation of North 4th Street. And the second portion of the request is to provide a larger buffer between the established homes on the north side of that potential parking lot over what could be accomplished without the vacation. Fort Healthcare has reached out to affected landowners by issuing a number of letters inviting their neighbors to two public meetings, one that was held on January the 18th and a second that was held on February the 1st. City staff did attend both of those meetings and was able to answer questions of the residents regarding the process and specific questions related to the request itself within their neighborhood. The general concerns from residents that were heard at those meetings varied from concerns regarding property values, noise, pollution, water runoff, traffic patterns, light pollution, and aesthetics. And those concerns have been, I think, echoed in part this evening with the public comments that we've had. The process for right-of-way discontinuance is laid out in statute. The process does indicate that those who are abutting the affected right-of-way within 2,650 feet are able to submit letters of objection to the right-of-way discontinuance. If at least 30% of those that are within the 2,650 feet area of abutting landowners respond with an objection, the city council must pass the resolution with a supermajority or 4/5 voting in favor. If we do not receive that 30%, then the resolution can pass with a simple majority or a 3/5 vote. To date, and I haven't checked today yet, but we had 9 letters that had been received, either 6 or 7 in favor, I believe it was, or I'm sorry, 6 or 7 opposed and 2 in favor. So to get to that 30% majority, we need a few more, or 30% objections, we need a few more letters. And those will be continued to be received by city staff up until that March 21st city council meeting. The request has been through the process of review on the side of city staff. As with all requests, we check first with the comprehensive plan that kind of governs the way that we foresee the city of Fort Atkinson developing as a community. The comprehensive plan does lay out this area for proposed expansion of medical facilities within that residential neighborhood. There are a number of references throughout the comprehensive plan to the importance that Fort Healthcare holds within the community as a local hospital, as well as an employer. I think that was spoken to as well in some of the public comment. Specific review by city staff. All city staff were provided with a request to review. Those that had specific comments, I'll note here. From my office on the city engineer side of things, the stormwater has been brought up a number of times as a concern with respect to the vacation. The next step following this, whether the street is vacated or not, would be a plan review for the proposed parking lot by Fort Healthcare that would come before this commission. It is at that time where we will review the stormwater in detail, but currently with what we understand about the proposed expansion, whether it be across 4th Street or not, the stormwater situation there, I think, can be managed within the existing facilities that we have, and any adverse effects can be mitigated fairly easily within the design. The traffic patterns have been brought up as well. Certainly the local traffic patterns will change. Those that are used to using North 4th Street at a local level to get to and from their various destinations will have to find another route. There certainly is nothing that can be done with respect to that under this vacation request. Those transient users that use North 4th Street to cut through the neighborhood on their way either to North High Streets or along Sherman Avenue and State Highway 106 likely will be reduced. That thoroughfare, if you will, without any stops will obviously under the street vacation no longer be as efficient. And so that traffic passing through the neighborhood is expected to likely decrease. We did have some input from both the police and the fire department with respect to emergency services in the area. The police department did not have any concerns with the discontinuance of that right of way and mentioned that as with any change, new traffic flow patterns would emerge. And they would be observing those, and we would be poised to manage if any situations with the new traffic patterns did arise. The fire department mentioned that there would be no concerns with them as long as Armenia and McMillan remained open and unobstructed. They did indicate that we do have a fire hydrant within that particular area of the road vacation, and they'd want to make sure that that location for the hydrant was preserved, whatever the outcome. From a public works standpoint, if vacated, the alignment of McMillan Street as it moves from south to north across the North 4th Street intersection may require some realignment. It does present some challenging situations for efficient snowplow operations through there. In summary, the city staff recommends to the Planning Commission that the City Council or recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council that the approval be. Let me read this directly so I don't mess it up. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the requested discontinuance of the right-of-way of North 4th Street between Armenia and McMillan Street based upon its compatibility with the comprehensive plan. And as I said, and I will note that those issues related to lighting, aesthetics, buffer, fences and things of that nature will come before Planning Commission in the site plan review process, again, regardless of whether the street is vacated or not. And that's where those specific issues will be dealt with in detail. So we're certainly acknowledging those here, but we don't have enough information to have any specific recommendations related to those. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that Planning Commission might have related to this request.
Questions or comments from the Plan Commission on this matter?
I've got one question. Could you, Andy, could you maybe describe how will the utilities or infrastructure under North 4th Street be maintained if the hospital paves a parking lot over the top?
Yeah, thank you. The maintenance of those will proceed as it does today. So the access to those utilities will be required through an easement that we will require, frankly, within the vacation of North 4th Street from Ford Healthcare. Our biggest concern with those utilities is any structures that are built on top of them. And of course, in that easement, we will specifically indicate that there would be no structures allowed to be constructed above. We are able to maintain the sewer lines and clean them from each of the adjacent manholes. The water line requires very little maintenance. We do have some valves that are outside of the vacation area that can be exercised. And the stormwater lines also within that area can be cleaned and maintained. Those stormwater lines may be rerouted slightly if the vacation occurs to accommodate drainage within the parking area itself. So those may change, but the water and the sewer running underneath the parking lot would remain.
Andy, in terms of the problems that might exist if we don't vacate 4th Street and they have a parking spot spaces across 4th Street, does that present a pedestrian problem?
Anytime pedestrians are crossing streets, it's not ideal. Obviously, we can't avoid that within numerous places within the city. I do believe that Ford Healthcare has indicated that it's not an ideal situation for them. They currently have that occurring with their remote parking lot, and this project is intending to try to eliminate that interaction.
The hospital's campus consolidation parking study that was part of our packet of materials. There is a dizzying amount of data in there to try to pull together all of the different locations that we're talking about. And there's not kind of like timing specific of when some of these things are. Some of the, there's short-term efforts, there's longer term. I'm not sure what is, what the time parameters may be on some of those short-term and longer term things. But if I tried to condense this down to something that sort of made some sense to me, tell me if I'm wrong in this, like the difference is between vacating a section of North 4th and not vacating is 28 parking spots. And so I guess I'd like to be convinced that everything has been done to accommodate an alternative plan or plans for 28 parking spots. And so some of that is I tried to make some heads or tails out of what is the bare minimum? If you moved everything over as it's projected to be, what would be the bare minimum of parking spaces that you would need? What would be the upper limit where you have a little buffer of, you know, if you're expecting 500, a need for, I'm just throwing out a number, 500 spots there, and you have 490, does that nix the project altogether? Or is there sort of somewhere in the middle, and maybe not even in the middle, but on the lower end that can accommodate 28 additional spots? That's what I would like to be like certain of before we make this really permanent decision to vacate a street.
Yeah, I don't think I can answer that in the level of detail that you're asking. The parking study that was done by Grafe was getting at just that. It was a justification, if you will, of the need to consolidate parking and of the need to place the parking closer to their campus. There is another aspect of that process, which is the parking lot that currently exists on the south east corner of the building. That is in process of being submitted to the Planning Commission for site plan review with the addition of some additional spots down in that location as well, which was part of their overall parking plan. But to get at the range that you're talking about in terms of, you know, if 500 is required and you're only at 490, I don't think I can provide that level of resolution. We do have Jim Nelson in the audience. I don't know if you're able to provide some resolution on that answer for commission member or for I'm sorry, Commissioner Lesko here, but certainly would invite you up to the microphone if you're able to do so.
While Mr. Nelson is coming towards us, I will just make a comment that our previous discussion centered around the ability to render the remote parking lot unnecessary, which would potentially provide for future redevelopment of that area. So if the difference of 28 spaces is not needing that remote parking lot versus needing the remote parking lot still.
Yeah, so thanks for the question and the opportunity to answer it. So the way the lots are set up, I know on the documents that are up here right now show, I think it's a net 28. We're actually at a net 40 between the two different options of putting the single lot there. We've had many generations and versions of this. This is an older version. And since then, we worked with some of the neighbors on changing the entrance to the parking lot, and we continue to kind of tweak it, getting it ready for future plan commission review. For us, if the lot isn't done, what we're estimating is that we'll need another 40 spots in order to accomplish all the parking. One of our long-term goals is to eliminate that remote parking lot altogether. So if we're not able to get that lot, what we would most likely have to do is take the area that was formerly 426 McNolan Street, and that would become our remote lot. So we would move the parking closer to the hospital, but not resolve the issue. One of our goals is to try to not have a street through the hospital campus, as Lauren had mentioned, having 83 or 100 parking stalls roughly, and having those individuals traverse back and forth across that street isn't wise. Our goal is to not do that in the future. So when we started working with the city on the comprehensive plan 20 years ago, we sat with John Wilmette at that point, and we looked at all directions and where the hospital should or could expand. And we basically agreed that the hospital should expand to the north. That's why that area on that bubble map shows up as future expansion for hospital or health related services. So it was targeted, and that's when we started purchasing land in 2005. We started purchasing houses to the north. So there's 12 houses on that block to the north, and we own, I believe, 8 of those houses right now. So we've been slowly acquiring them as neighbors have indicated their willingness to sell. So long story short, yes, we do need the additional parking in order to resolve all the parking for us. And if not, we continue to maintain a remote lot. And then we have a street through the middle of our campus. So we're trying to eliminate all those. And in the future, we don't have plans for building additions. As Andy mentioned, there's utilities that go underneath there. The intent is that future building additions would be added onto that north side, and we would continue growing to that north area. And so eventually 4th Street will need to be vacated in order for that to happen, or because we've maximized out the block that we're on. So I know we had, over the years, we explored opportunities to move the entire hospital. That's not really practical to build a new hospital at a cost of about $250 million. That's not feasible, not practical for us to accomplish, continue being here. Plus, we have a perfectly good facility right now, so to abandon it would be foolhardy on our part. So we're trying to figure out how to continue to be efficient and effective and continue providing high quality care in the community.
And so, thank you for that. I appreciate it. How many different off-site structures are you talking about relocating to the campus right now?
So our long-term, the conversations we're having right now is we have 2 buildings that are on that north side that we want to move into the hospital campus. We're still working on those. So we have 2 leases, the 512 Wilcox building. We would like to move the services that we have in that building back onto the hospital campus. Part of the parking feasibility study took that into account to make sure that we would have the parking for both staff and patients for that services. And the other is the internal medicine and pediatric building. Doesn't meet ADA requirements. We need to basically get out of that building. So we're looking at trying to bring those services back to the hospital campus. And that also was part of that study to make sure that we had enough parking for both patients and staff.
And would those be short-term? I mean, do those fall under the short-term plan of?
No, those are a long-term plan. So those would go into part of the buildings that we can't use for hospital services. So the original building, 1949 building, does not meet code requirements for us to put hospital services into that. We can put clinic services into that, which would be, that's part of the reason why we're also working on redesigning that southeast lot, the corner of McMillan Street and Sherman Avenue, to expand that to accommodate patient parking there for adding more of those clinic services.
I know everybody probably has a different definition of what long-term may be, but in your perspective, is it more than 10 years, 20, or what is long-term?
In our world, we try not to get too far out because medicine's changing so fast, but the type of investment we're looking at making is at least a 20-year investment. So we're getting in and pretty significant remodel of the building, somewhere between probably $15 and $20 million renovation of that 1949 building, that portion of the building, in order to accommodate those services. The way it's structured now, we wouldn't be able to run a clinic in there.
So as far as any short-term consolidation efforts go, are there, in addition to the 2 buildings that you've said are longer term, are there any shorter term needs that would require a vacation in the next year in order to accommodate what you might need in a less than 10-year time frame?
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question or what you're trying to tease out of the question.
I think what I'm trying to get at is how soon is the maximum number of parking spots that you need? Like, where is that in the timeline?
So
here?
our
is it
goal,
in the next couple of years, or is it more like 10 to 20 years out?
Yeah, everything I described for you right now is we need to have this happen so we can work on those other projects. So we need to get the parking and to get all that in place before we start moving those services back onto the hospital campus. There aren't any other shorter term projects that are impacting the parking. Pretty much what I described for you with those services the remote parking lot that we have, the desire to bring all that parking back onto campus so our employees don't have to either be shuttled or walk the 3-4 blocks to the campus. Think of the last couple of weeks and the weather that we've had. All of that is the focus of kind of what we're talking about now, getting those additional, the difference between just isolating where those 4 houses are, putting that into parking, and the vacation of 4th Street plus doing the parking, it accomplishes that goal for us. Our goal is to be parking on that ideally by Thanksgiving. So the vacation of that street, moving those houses, our desire, a long-term desire, which isn't part of the conversation tonight, but just to give you some insight, what we want to do is we want to take those 4 houses, move those 4 houses where that McMillan Street building was, that 426 McMillan Street building was, create a new road that's basically parallel to Florence Street, and have those houses be the first of in that planned neighborhood into that area, and then backfill all that with the parking and somewhat similar design. That's kind of what was on that on there. We've got a little bit more work to do with engineers. We also would like to get out of that remote parking lot, which will make that land available for development. As long as we have 4 acres of a 7-acre parcel covered in a parking lot, it's not the best use of that land. What we would like to do is we're trying to create some opportunity for some high density senior housing.
So I think I don't want to monopolize the conversation here. So I'll leave it with this for now, is that like has been noted in our packet of materials, that over the years, there has been tremendous compromise, conflict, and resolution over there in that in the hospital neighborhood. And I'd like to think that there's still some room for further compromise that may not require a vacation of the street.
Yeah, I don't know how we accomplish the long-term goals, both the immediate and the long-term goals, without vacating 4th Street. And I'll go back and point out, I mean, this has been kind of long in the works, about 20 some years, working with the city and identifying the comprehensive plan on how the hospital would be able to grow, to continue providing and expanding services for the community. So, I mean, it's, this has been part of that where we've been working towards, and we're kind of right up to that place now. So we can compromise short-term now and have a couple of parking lots throughout the area, only to come back and visit this topic again in a couple of years.
Thanks. I appreciate your input. I do have one then quick question for city engineer, and the comprehensive plan. I don't recall. Does it specifically address vacating a section of that street, or does it just identify as here's an expansion of the property for the hospital?
It just identifies expansion. It doesn't get into that level of detail.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the Plan Commission?
Yeah, excuse me. I'm just going off of what David questioned, which is kind of along the same lines. So, and Jim, I don't know if you're still up there, but the reason that you want to expand this parking into the 4th Street area and across from what is the current 4th Street is to also allow for this consolidation of clinics, and that amount of parking is going to accommodate the consolidation of these clinics. Is that a true statement?
Yes, in the parking study that was in your packet, that parking study took into account of consolidating those clinics to the hospital campus.
Okay. And the current hospital campus, or the current building, has the square feet to
Yes.
absorb these clinics?
Yes.
Okay. But it has to be extensively remodeled.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm not sure if it was covered in the packet, but on the page 6 of the packet, where it shows the two different options. On the bottom right, it shows what is a current parking lot and with shaded over saying added green space. And further down in the packet, it shows that it was about 20 spaces that would be turned into green space. My question is it necessary in either of these options that that green space has to be added? Or could you maybe describe like why was that, like why is that note on there? Like why would that be changed to green space?
So the city's requirements are is that we have 20% of our campus into green space. So in order to accomplish that, we convert some of that back into green space. We were willing to sacrifice that parking lot because as you look at it, it is a very difficult parking lot to get in and out of, much less to maintain snow plowing and the sort. That would be the ideal place to kind of create some more green space, or the trade-off for the green space.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the Plan Commission?
Just for the engineer, is there a plan to eliminate parking on the 300 block of McMillan if 4th Street is closed there?
We have not looked at any plans for that. That doesn't mean we can't, but with this request, we have not.
Because I would assume that McMillan is going to become in that block a busier street if 4th Street isn't operating.
It's quite possible.
It's narrow now, isn't it? Much narrower than McMillan is in the 400 block.
Yeah, I think I'd have to look at that, Lauren, to be honest with you. I think it is a bit narrower down through there, in particular with the parking, which is taken up, I think, on both sides of that currently, if I'm not mistaken. Or is that on?
They park on both sides, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's mostly staff parking that's out there.
I don't think our staff are parking that far north. They are currently parking temporarily in that small lot at the 426 building. And a lot of them are still out in our larger remote lot. I don't believe they're parking in that northern block. The neighbors that are there might have a better feel for that than I.
Block though, isn't that primarily the parking on the hospital side, staff of the hospital?
So the block that the hospital is on,
Right.
there's some limited parking in there right now. I think it's 2-hour parking
Yeah, it's 2
around
hour
the
on
hospital
each side.
campus on 4th Street, McMillan, and Armenia Street. And that was for that exact purpose, is to try to discourage long-term parking for staff out there. And we'd be fully supportive of getting 2-hour parking on McMillan Street. I think McMillan Street from that block from 4th Street all the way north is the same width. It's a pretty wide street. It was developed, I think, for that traffic to and from the hospital in mind at higher volume. But we would wholly support limiting that parking there.
Any additional questions or comments from the Plan Commission?
Do we have the city attorney on remotely, or
No, he is not here.
one of the materials that was supplied by someone in the neighborhood referenced the court case, Boss versus City of Middleton, and I was hoping to get the attorney's take on that. I tried reading it, but lack of law school, I didn't get too far. So I guess we'll just table that one. I think too, regardless of whether the recommendation from this body is to proceed with a vacation or to deny it, it's going to go to the city council, and that body will kind of repeat this process regardless of where we're at. So I intend to vote against it, only because I think I would still, and I'm not convinced that like we've done everything, we've exhausted everything to find 28 more spots.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the Plan Commission?
Rebecca, I don't think, was that David that was speaking?
Yes.
I don't think his microphone was on.
My apologies. I will briefly say I'm not in support of vacating right now, mostly because I'm not convinced that both sides and the city have done everything to accommodate a difference of 28 parking spots. Now, I get that ideally you'd have one connected campus that wouldn't be separated by a street. We got to work with what we have here, and I feel like there are things that possibly we could do that would be a little bit further along, kind of reducing maybe some of the amount of spaces that we need, because I'm not quite sure I've heard like what is the bare minimum of what is needed versus, and while still accommodating city codes and ADA codes and everything. Also, is there a chance to reduce some of those courtesy spaces that the report says are not that often used? They're not at capacity. Can you trim a little bit there? Is there more on the street that can be done as well? Is there some people have suggested there's another side of, have you looked at the other side of the property and exhausted what could be done there? So thank you for reminding me I had my mic off.
Well, thank you. I guess I would agree with David and say, you know, if the hospital and the city would consider, and I know these are other expenses, but pedestrian bridge and or a parking structure. That's all I'll say for now. Thanks.
So if that's a form of a question, we did consider a parking structure, but the cost is pretty prohibitive. It's about $25,000 per space just to construct it.
Yeah.
And then trying to maintain it is pretty expensive as well.
Okay, any final questions or comments from the Plan Commission? Okay, I would entertain a motion to recommend that the City Council approve the discontinuance of the portion of 4th Street public right-of-way between Armenia and McMillan Streets. I will make that motion then. I move to recommend that the City Council approve the discontinuance of a portion of the 4th Street public right-of-way between Armenia and McMillan Streets. Does anybody second?
I will second so that this can move to a vote.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Clerk Ebert, can we do a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Gray,
Aye.
Commissioner Highfield,
Aye.
Commissioner Kesnick,
No.
Commissioner Lesko,
No.
Commissioner Schultz,
Aye.
Manager Lemire,
Aye.
Engineer Selly.
Aye.
Guys have it.
That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, review and possible recommendation to the City Council relating to a certified survey map for RTLE Properties LLC for the property located at 1531 and 1533 South Main Street.
Yeah, thank you. This is on the city's southern end of Main Street. It abuts the municipal boundary between the town of Koshkonong and the city of Fort Atkinson. The request is to break the current lot into 3 additional lots from the parent parcel. 2 lots will be fronting South Main Street. Those will be what we've come to know as a twin lot with a twin home. The intention there is to build a home that would have a common wall down the middle and have separate ownership on either side. This is, of course, allowed within our zoning code. The 3rd lot that would be developed is along Riggert Road. That lot would be just over an acre. And the future plans for that lot are potentially to place additional residential structures on there under a condominium plat that would allow for I think it is, if I'm not mistaken, up to 4 buildings on that lot with the 1 acre size of the lot. City staff reviewed the request, has no concerns, and recommends approval of such. Be happy to take any questions anybody has regarding this request.
I move the recommendation forward to the city council to approve the certified survey map for RTLE Properties LLC for the property located at 1531 and 1533 South Main.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any questions or comments from the plan commission? I will just make a note that I know the staff report indicates that it's an extraterritorial CSM, but it is actually a within the city. Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
that was just a carryover from a different staff report. So any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item number 7 is review and possible action relating to the request for site plan review for signage for Goodwill of Southern Wisconsin, South Central Wisconsin, located at 1530 Madison Avenue.
Oh, yes, this is a sign review for Goodwill store over there. They want to replace the signage on the building. It has gone through review and it does pass all our zoning ordinances for that particular thing. There is no proposed change of use there. And it is in staff's opinion in concert with our comprehensive plan. So as you can see there, they had some changes to their logo and stuff like that. So they're wanting to adjust their signage, which is getting a little faded over there. So it is nice to see that they're putting a fresh face on it.
Any questions or comments from the plan commission?
I move to approve their request for a site plan review for the new signage for Goodwill of South Central Wisconsin located at 1530 Madison Avenue.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any final comments, questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Next on the agenda is item number 8, presentation to the Plan Commission from Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Prize for a concept plan for multifamily residential development along Banker Road.
Yeah, thank you. We have representatives from the Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Prize team with us today. This project has been long in the making on the side of city staff and the development team, and I think we've arrived at a point where it's a good time to make this public. This is a concept presentation for the Planning Commission, such that they can be apprised of the project and the progress has been made thus far. So with that, I'll introduce Steve Willie with the Hoffman Group, and he's going to kind of walk us through some of the, as I said, progress that's been made to date.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you to the Plan Commission. My name is Steve Willie, as Andy mentioned, here with our development partner, Cedar Prize, and their 2 representatives, Russ Kivanimi, as well as Corey Scheidler. And they'll have a piece of this presentation as we move forward. So as Rebecca stated, we're here, and Andy stated, we're here to kind of describe where we are at currently in this multifamily development process for Fort Atkinson. Happy to be here. A little background. We started this process, I think, Q3. It seems when Andy said it was maybe a couple of years ago, but it maybe feels that way. But for the multifamily development that we're looking at, we've been working with Rebecca, Andy, Jed, and many of the other city staff to get to this point and feel we're making some great progress for a very, I think, exciting development and multifamily development for the city of Fort Atkinson. So next slide. Okay, you've got it up there. We've already done the introductions, but what we plan to do today is describe and present the concept diagrams. What you'll see today from Russ will be a site plan and maybe some details about that, as well as Corey talking about blocking, organizational diagrams, some floor plans, as well as some exterior perspectives. I'll review a little bit of more of the data that will surround what this development will be. I'll also review just an overall milestone schedule, and then we'll go through a graphic fly through of what this development could look like. So real quickly, a little history on us. So both Hoffman Development Group as well as Cedar Prize have been working on projects throughout the Midwest here for a while now. Our partnership really capitalizes on each other's strengths. Typically focus on an 80-20 missing middle market model. That's a few M's in a row. But really what we're trying to do is develop a product that will be market rate. 80% of the development would be market rate. Another 20% of that development would be affordable. So we can go through some of that detail, but right now that's kind of the overall premise of this development that we're proposing. We're developers for fee, meaning that we don't necessarily own the development as it's completed. When we're midway through or partway through the actual due diligence and all the other things that you'll see tonight, we get to a certain point, we actually approach investors to be a part of the ownership moving forward. So that's kind of how we do our work from an HDG and Cedar Prize perspective. We work together to bring those things to light. And what we do, again, is performing the due diligence. We do the investigative portion of the development. We also then attract the investors and then subsequently deliver the design and construction to finish up the project. So we're involved from beginning to end. The one quick thing I wanted to talk about is that our two companies are born from two other companies. Hoffman Development Group came from Hoffman Planning, Design and Construction, a company that has been around for over 131 years. And is a integrated design build company that's operating out of the city of Appleton, Wisconsin. Hoffman's process, or at least one of the main differentiators, is the fact that they have a bidding process that maximizes competitive bidding, sometimes and oftentimes saving at least 20% on overall construction costs. It also specializes in utilizing local subcontractors when possible to keep the construction dollars within the municipality, in this case, and within Fort Atkinson. As far as Cedar Prize is concerned, that company was born out of Cedar Corporation. And Cedar Corporation is celebrating 48 years in operation. They've worked with a very large amount of municipalities within the state of Wisconsin and providing infrastructure, architecture, and environmental services. They have 4 Wisconsin offices as well. So with that, our partnership with Cedar Prize and with Hoffman Development Group has been around for a while, and really excited to be part of this development that we're talking about in Fort Atkinson. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Russ to talk a little bit about the site.
Thank you, Stephen, for the introduction. Again, I'm Russ Kivenemy. I'm a principal engineer at Cedar Corporation and Cedar Prize. Pleasure to be here tonight to present to you this exciting Trillium multifamily project proposed within the Banker Road development. So the slide we have up now, this is the overall site plan view of the area. We worked our plan that was mentioned by city staff over the last few months. This plan is in conformance with the Vanderwall Concept 2 for the Banker Road development. So the light gray lines you see throughout the development north of our multifamily project and to the east, those roads are all following the Vanderwall Concept 2 that the city has approved previously for this development. And just following up on Steve's introduction, Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Prize were selected by the city of Fort Atkinson to be the master developer of the Banker Road development. So this is the first phase project that we're presenting to you tonight, the Trillium project. So the overall map view, before I go into the more detailed site concept plan, on the left is the school property. And then in between the school property and this property, you'll see a dark gray line on the west side or the left side of the multifamily development. We're calling that the school access drive. That's proposed to be dedicated at some point as a city street to access the development. On the right-hand side is the existing Banker Road. And then on the south side of the project is Campus Drive. Next slide, please. So this is just a blow up of our overall site plan. Again, on the left side, is the school access drive to the project. There's a proposed east-west new street from the school access drive to Banker Road. That'll be a public dedicated 66-foot right of way with street and utilities, sidewalks, both sides. Same thing with the school access drives intended to be improved with sidewalk, both sides, a typical urban section street. So the east-west street connects on the east to Banker Road. And then as part of the site plan, there are 3 multifamily buildings. They're called A and B, but that came over from some of our other concept plans. On this concept plan, all the buildings are the same. There are 3 buildings, 47 units per building. Each one of the buildings has underground parking and then also what we call side entry parking. And when Corey, our architect, presents the elevation drawings and the renderings, you'll get a better view of that. So there's 3 buildings, lots of green space on the site, a playground lot area, an interconnecting loop trail that takes advantage of the stormwater pond. There's about 1.5 acres of existing wetlands in the southwest corner of the site that Cedar Corp assured wetland delineation staff completed a delineation of that area this fall. Next to the wetland area is our stormwater management system. And then you see some parking, some surface parking. The project is set up that each one of the units, it's 141 unit total between the 3 buildings. Each unit will have a parking space either underground or as the side entry from the parking lot. Off on the right-hand side, there's some information in the legend and the site totals. We'll also be covering some of that information in more detail under our fact sheet as part of our presentation. But real quick, we have 51 1-bedroom, 1-bath units, 42 2-bedroom, 1-bath units, 28 2-bedroom, 2-bath units, and 20 3-bedroom, 2-bath units for a total of 141. And as Steve mentioned, this is a unique business model on our part as part of our team, 80% market rate and 20% affordable workforce housing, which is a need that every community has. So it's getting into a different market than what you have seen before in Fort Atkinson. So with that, I'll turn it over to Corey.
Good afternoon. So I get the exciting part to reveal the building here, but just like to talk a little bit about the process. It's been a very collaborative process working with staff. It's been very enjoyable. We have a very unique site and it allowed us to do some really unique things in this apartment complex. So as we look at the diagram that we have in front of you here this afternoon, you're going to notice a bunch of different colors in a building stack. So starting at the bottom, the base layer, we have pink. So the lowest level underground is going to be our underground parking. Above that on the main level or at grade, you'll notice some pink boxes on the lower right-hand side. Those pink boxes are at grade parking. So those will be at grade parking stalls. So kind of unique for apartment complex here is to have some at grade parking stalls, but that's how we were able to get a covered parking stall for each apartment building. The yellow boxes or blocks are going to be our single or 1-bedroom units. The purple boxes are 2-bedroom, 1-bath units. And the blue is the 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or excuse me, 2-bedroom, 3-bath. And the green is our 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit. Russ covered the unit counts earlier, and Steve will talk a little bit more about that. The thing that I think is unique about this setting here is with the underground parking and at grade parking, we're able to eliminate a lot of surface asphalt. As we look back at the site plan, There's a lot of green space on the development. We have our wetlands, we have our stormwater treatment, and then we have a series of trails. So we have a lot of opportunity for creating spaces for activity and just a really nice green space. So as far as the appearance of the building, we went with a more modern concept. Down low, the dark gray area that you see on the renderings here in front of you is going to be a masonry product. And as we go up and around the building, we're starting to introduce different colors of siding. So this is going to be a very durable, low maintenance product. One of the focuses we have for the facility is to create a low maintenance, very efficient facility. As you look across the facade, you're going to see a balcony at each unit. So trying to create those amenities for the tenants. Again, that just ties back to what I mentioned earlier with the trails and the green space and trying to create those opportunities. We do have a couple more renderings here we'll share with you. So here in this rendering, you can see that the buildings do have different colors. We tried to introduce different colors within each building, and then within each different building, we have other colors as well, just to promote some diversity in the buildings and not make it look like a plug and chug type apartment complex. You'll also notice that as you enter into the development, there's underground parking that takes you to both apartment buildings, and then the third one in the rear, there's a similar underground parking entrance. You'll also see that we blended in the ag grade parking stalls into the building to try to make them more aesthetically pleasing. When you go around to the pond side or the rear of the apartment buildings, that's all green space. So that'll be landscaped nicely, some trails and patios back there as well. So I really try to focus on minimizing that asphalt and creating the density that the city desired. And here's just another view showing the variation in the buildings. Another view of that access to the underground parking, and then our nice stormwater pond and wetlands to the back. With that, I'll turn it back over to Steve.
All right, thank you, Corey. So just some data. What we have up on the screen, we call the fact sheet. It's just an overview. You've heard most of it already, but with regard to the number of buildings, we've got 3 of them. Each of them are 4 stories above grade. We already kind of went through the units, but again, 141 total units, 141 total spaces that are covered or enclosed, as we call it. And then surface parking, there's another 99 there. So we have a total of 240 parking stalls that we are anticipating at this point. I'm going to skip over the square footages. Those are kind of germane to maybe code type issues, but I'm going to pick up again where it says site density. We have 15.26 units per acre. So we've got a density that's I think a little higher than maybe just a 2-story. Obviously we have a 4-story situation here, but I think as far as the overall use and the overall site, when we're building on 9.1 acres, it's I think after a while it looks very comfortable. There's plenty of green space on it, and I think the obviously as Corey was alluding to, the fact that we've got underground parking, we kind of hide some of the parking that ordinarily you might see on surface. So again, that affords I think a better development, something that's more comfortable to the people who rent from it. So next slide, and we're almost done here, but milestone schedule. Again, this is, as a note, this is a guideline as we move forward. As I talked with Andy through email today a little bit, excuse me, there are things that can certainly push us off of this this milestone schedule. We can also gain some time here and there. So with this, again, just a guideline, but obviously we're meeting here. That's the first item tonight on the 28th. Survey work is going to start very shortly, and that'll be done by Cedar Corp. Certified survey map is planned to be finished about the 10th of March. Preparing conditional use permit or the CUP application will be over the next 10 days after that, and then submitted to the this plan commission on the 24th of March. So we're moving along. hoping to have that reviewed between the 27th of March and the 19th of May, and hoping that we'd have an approval sometime around the 23rd of May. So we are also working toward what's called a project development agreement, or PDA. We've already submitted that as a draft to the city, and we hope to have that reviewed and agreed upon between now and the 5th of May. Where that after that, it would go in front of the council and be hopefully approved sometime around the 6th of June. The next thing is going to be the more longer term type of discussion and or occurrence or event that would take place. We're looking at closing the financing sometime around the first part of January of 2024. So as you can tell there, it's somewhere in the 6 to 8 month range that we would actually be talking with investors to get entitlements, to go through all the different there's a lot of different terms that are used in order to provide enough information for investors to understand what it is this project could be, and then to actually close on it. So that is what we're referring to as the closing of finance. And once that is closed and done, we will start with design and bidding. That's about a 4.5 month or so process to design the buildings, and then to physically bid it, which will take about 1.5 months of that 4.5 months. And once that is complete near the end of May in 2024, we'd start construction. June of 24 is our thought, and sometime in the 4th quarter of 2025 is when we'd actually be finished with construction. That doesn't mean we're open, because we still need to do other things in order to have that happen, but the finish of construction is thought to be in that time frame. So at this point, we can maybe start that video. Thanks again for everyone listening to our presentation of the Trillium multifamily development. And with that, we have a little bit of a video for you to take a look at. As Corey was talking earlier, we have access to underground parking. As you can see on that elevation there, we also have tuck under garages. And there you can see the access to the underground. So we've got, as he was saying earlier, we have a multitude of different parking options, from tuck under garages, as we call them, to full underground parking stalls to the actual surface lots. So I think we've got parking pretty well set. And as Corey mentioned earlier, hopefully what you see here is kind of more of a modern aesthetic that we were shooting for. So what does the drainage area look like when it doesn't have water in it?
Can you turn your microphone on, Commissioner Gray? Thank you.
So that one.
Good question. The drainage area will always have water on it.
It will.
Yes, we design them as wet detention ponds for the best water quality, removal of contaminants and sediment that will settle to the bottom of the pond. So the stormwater management system will be controlled with an outfall pipe that'll always have a normal water level. You know, the only time we'd go below that would be from evaporation or transpiration.
So you can add
water
water.
depth would
How do you add water?
From runoff and so forth.
So if you don't have runoff, if it's dry, how do you keep water in
The
there?
water will have, as part of the design, will be 6 to 8 feet deep. So typically, even with evaporation and transpiration, it never draws the pond all the way down to the bottom. And then we use other methods, you know, clay lining of the pond and so forth. So you don't lose that through infiltration with liner ponds. So it's intended to always be a wet pond, both for aesthetics and water quality purposes.
I'd just like to say I appreciate the maximizing the space and going 4 stories high. as sometimes we can be limited by where we can grow as a city and maximizing the current space, building up versus out. I do appreciate the designs that you presented.
Thank you.
Would it be your plan to build all three at the same time?
Yes, all three would be completed at the same time. They may not start exactly the same time, but
You're
yes,
going to build all of them.
all 141 units in 3 buildings, correct?
I have a question. Will these, excuse me, will these buildings have elevators?
Yes, they will.
Thank you. And the siding, the different color siding, is that a fiber cement product?
Hasn't been determined quite yet, but it will be a lap siding that will be durable to withstand many years of use.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the Plan Commission? Okay, this item is not on for action tonight. We did go over that schedule, so obviously there will be a lot more decision points for this development coming in the future. So thank you very much for coming here tonight and for presenting the concept plan for this project. We're looking forward to continuing to work together on making sure it's a high quality development and that it moves forward as planned.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, and nothing left on the agenda, so I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.